Max, you would not believe the amount of single-use plastic I saw this morning, just piled up. It's truly depressing. We are drowning in waste.
Welcome back to Fluent Talk, everyone. I'm Max, and that, clearly, is Chloe, coming in hot with the environmental data before the mic is even warmed up. Welcome, Chloe. Let's talk about that plastic.
It's the perfect launch point for today's topic, planetary dilemmas. We're asking individual versus corporate responsibility. Who should bear the ultimate accountability for the climate crisis?
It has to be the individual, Chloe. We all have a carbon footprint. Every decision you make, what you eat, where you travel, contributes. If you don't reduce your personal carbon footprint, you don't care.
That is a narrative created by the fossil fuel companies. They invented the carbon footprint concept to shift the blame. The reality is 71% of global emissions come from just 100 corporations.
Wait, no. The corporations are the drivers of economic growth. They are the ones implementing the initiatives to reduce their impact. They provide the technology.
You mean green initiatives? Those are often minimal efforts to look good. The core responsibility must be placed on the fossil fuels industry to divest and the corporations to achieve real accountability. We're using crucial vocabulary about our planet's future. Stay tuned until the final segment to get the full list of today's essential terms, including carbon footprint and accountability.
I agree the burden is shared, but without individual demand for sustainable products, there is no incentive for the corporations to invest in green initiatives. It's a feedback loop.
A complicated loop. Now, let's talk about a technological shortcut that sounds like science fiction, but is now seriously being debated. Geo-engineering. Is it a brilliant solution or a catastrophic risk? A complicated loop. Now, let's talk about a technological shortcut that sounds like science fiction, but is now being seriously debated. Geo-engineering. Is it a brilliant solution or a catastrophic risk?
Geoengineering is a viable and, frankly, a cost-effective path to climate mitigation. We're running out of time, Chloe. Techniques like solar radiation management could quickly cool the planet down.
It's an ethical hazard. Geoengineering is just an excuse for polluters to continue emitting, and we have no idea what the unintended consequences will be. We're essentially gambling with the global weather system.
But the risk of inaction is higher. Studies show that if we deployed stratospheric aerosol injection, we could stabilize global temperatures for, potentially decades at a fraction of the cost of completely restructuring our energy grid.
Wait, which studies are you referencing? Because the vast majority of scientific literature points to dangerous, high-risk, unintended consequences, like shifting rainfall patterns and creating droughts in vulnerable regions.
I'm referencing the economics of it, Chloe. The point is, technology provides climate mitigation options that political willpower doesn't. We have to consider the pragmatic, scalable solution.
The ethical hazard is substituting pollution reduction with a technological band-aid. Geoengineering doesn't solve the core problem of overconsumption. It just creates a whole new layer of global, dangerous risk. These are some of the most complex terms in climate science. If you want to master geoengineering and unintended consequences, stay with us until the end for our vocabulary summary.
We agree on the risk, but I see geoengineering as a temporary bridge for climate mitigation. The long-term solution must address consumption.
The long-term solution starts with fundamental behavioral change, and nothing demands more fundamental change than how we eat. Next, let's debate veganism and the ethics of food. The long-term solution starts with fundamental behavioral change, and nothing demands more fundamental change than how we eat. Next, let's debate veganism and the ethics of food.
I knew this was coming. Look, the rise of plant-based diets is great for business, but let's be realistic. Meat production is a critical part of food security in many regions around the world.
You look physically pained, Max. But we have to address the facts. Industrial animal farming is a huge contributor to emissions. Promoting sustainable agriculture and shifting to plant-based diets is a moral imperative.
Moral imperative? What about the millions of people in developing nations who rely on livestock for protein and for their livelihood? You cannot sacrifice food security for a Western ideal of ethical sourcing.
Food security is a genuine concern, but it should not be achieved at the expense of animal suffering or the environment. We need to focus on sustainable agriculture, the Haikwamsam Khan, to ethical sourcing, the Lot Huangso Upatan. This is one of the toughest debates we've had. Stay tuned to the end for our vocabulary summary, where we define essential terms like food security, sustainable agriculture, and plant-based.
I think the pragmatic approach is to promote ethical sourcing, choosing free-range, grass-fed, rather than demanding a wholesale shift to fully plant-based diets globally. It has to be practical.
Practicality cannot excuse cruelty. The change is coming. Speaking of things that look green but often hide a darker truth, let's talk about corporate deception, the greenwashing trap. Practicality cannot excuse cruelty. The change is coming. Speaking of things that do look green but often hide a darker truth, let's talk about corporate deception, the greenwashing trap.
Greenwashing. It's a necessary evil, Chloe. Companies are responding to consumer demand for sustainability claims. If they don't, they lose market share. It's a form of competitive marketing.
It is fundamentally dishonest. Greenwashing is misleading marketing that makes a company appear more environmentally friendly than it actually is. It undermines genuine consumer activism. I mean, how many times have we seen a massive fossil fuel company sponsor a tiny park cleanup? It's all about the illusion of transparency, not the reality.
Okay, I get it. The optics are, well, they're carefully crafted. But transparency is expensive. Full transparency about the entire supply chain would bankrupt half the companies you buy from.
That's why we need stricter regulation. The difficulty of being honest does not excuse the practice of greenwashing. It is a direct attack on consumer activists who are trying to make ethical choices. Are you being fooled by corporate marketing? Stay with us. We will define greenwashing, transparency, and consumer activism in the vocabulary summary at the end.
The key takeaway is skepticism. Consumers need to look past the superficial sustainability claims and demand real, auditable metrics. Greenwashing exists because consumers allow it to.
We need to demand more, and we need to prepare for the global consequences if we fail to demand change. Next, let's discuss the most human and terrifying outcome: climate migration and resource scarcity. We need to demand more, and we need to prepare for the global consequences if we fail to demand change. Next, let's discuss the most human and terrifying outcome: climate migration and resource scarcity.
This is the most dangerous scenario. As areas become uninhabitable due to environmental disaster, we will see mass climate migration. This creates immense geopolitical tension over diminishing resources.
But we have a moral obligation to accept climate refugees. They are victims of the industrialized nation's emissions. We must prioritize humanitarian aid over national borders.
That's idealistic, Chloe. Resource scarcity, especially water and arable land, will override ethics. Nations will prioritize their own food security and borders, leading to more, not less, geopolitical tension.
Resource scarcity is amplified by our current consumption model. If we fail to address the core problem, then the mass movement of climate refugees will inevitably lead to conflict, making it a true environmental disaster. We're debating the future of global security. Don't miss the final segment. We will define crucial terms like climate migration, resource scarcity, and geopolitical tension in our vocabulary summary.
The pragmatic goal must be long-term planning. We need international agreements to manage climate migration humanely, while simultaneously investing in technologies to alleviate resource scarcity.
A powerful and sobering conclusion. The decisions we make now about consumption and ethics will directly determine the fate of millions of future climate refugees. Now, let's move on to our final segment where we give our listeners the full vocabulary takeaway. A powerful and sobering conclusion. The decisions we make now about consumption and ethics will directly determine the fate of millions of future climate refugees. Now, let's move on to our final segment, where we give our listeners the full vocabulary takeaway.
Exactly. This is your essential vocabulary from today's critical conversation. Listen closely and practice these terms this week. First, carbon footprint. This is the total amount of greenhouse gases emitted directly and indirectly by a person or organization. Example, reducing your carbon footprint is a personal responsibility.
Next, geo-engineering. This refers to large-scale intervention methods designed to counteract the effects of climate change. Example, geo-engineering carries high unintended consequences.
Third, greenwashing. This is misleading information disseminated by an organization to present an environmentally responsible public image. Example, consumers should look past the greenwashing claims.
Fourth, food security. This refers to the state of having reliable access to a sufficient quantity of affordable, nutritious food. Example, climate change poses a major threat to global food security.
Fifth, climate migration. This is the movement of a person or groups of people who, mainly for climate change reasons, are forced to leave their homes. Example, the rise in sea levels will trigger mass climate migration.
And finally, resource scarcity. This is the lack of sufficient resources, like water or land, to meet the demands of a population. Example, resource scarcity is a major cause of geopolitical tension.
Whew. Thank you for joining us for this essential conversation about our planet. We certainly tackled some difficult truths.
Our final question for you. Do you believe geoengineering is a necessary tool or an unacceptable risk? We want to know your opinions on this high-stakes dilemma in the comments below.
Remember to hit that subscribe button. We post a brand new episode with fresh debates and more essential vocabulary every single day at 6 a.m. on the English Easy channel.
We'll see you next time. Protect the planet.